just arrived in Tel Aviv. We're here on the beach. It's really nice. It's deceptively nice because 20 miles that way is the West Bank, which Israel has been occupying since 1967. And the reason we're interested in the West Bank is because the other thing that Israel has been doing there is building settlements. So we're going to head over there and find out what that's like. Israel conquered the West Bank and East Jerusalem in 1967 after 3 Arab nations battled the newly minted Jewish state in the 6 Days War. Israel was only 20 years old at the time, and its victory was hailed as a David versus Goliath triumph. A lot of waters passed under the bridge since then, and what was supposed to have been a temporary occupation of the Palestinian territories has turned into 4.5 decades of misery for the Arab residents in the West Bank. Aside from the fact that the West Bank is crisscrossed with barbed wire, walls, and military checkpoints, over 300,000 Israelis have taken it upon themselves to settle what was supposed to be the future Palestinian state. According to international law, the settlements are totally illegal. They represent a colonization of the lands that are slated for handover to the Palestinians under an agreement that both Israel and the Palestinians signed in 1993. As a result, the peace process has ground to a halt, and the much-lauded two-state solution is looking less likely than ever before. I wanted to find out who the settlers were and what motivated them to pick up sticks and move across the Green Line to become the most notorious squatters the world has ever known. But first, I decided to get some counter-terrorism training in a West Bank gun range with a member of Israel's Special Forces. Buddy! Just in case. We're in a firing range in a settlement in the West Bank, and these guys behind me are civilians training to do border security, and they've got some pretty mean-looking guns.
Is this a safe gun? Yes. No such thing as a safe gun. Guns are made for killing. You standing at the entrance to the synagogue. Inside, there's a terror attack happening. Okay, I want you to imagine you standing in ready position, pointing your weapon inside the synagogue, trying to take care of the terrorists. Remember how we define counter-terrorism as combat in a civilian area. We don't want to hurt civilians. We're here to protect them, correct? This is not Xbox, it's not games. We don't push a reset button and then you get a new life. There's real bullets outside. There's a real possibility that I'll never see my kids again. Up! Simon's scared of me.
No shit. I was starting to think this guy's job was just to scare the crap out of anyone who showed up for the training.
Go! Buddy!
Turns out, I wasn't the only one who thought it'd be a good idea to get some training. A Canadian woman we nicknamed Sarah Connor had brought her whole family along for the Fear Fest.
Doesn't hurt to know how to use an AK though, right?
And for what it's worth, her daughter turned out to be a pretty good marksman. Well, I hit it twice. Didn't do as good as the 10-year-old girl.
Not bad.
Do you think it's important for everybody who moves to Israel to have this kind of counter-terrorism training?
Look, counter-terrorism training, I don't think it's important for everyone unless you're a counter-terrorist.
Yeah.
But to have an awareness of terrorism.
So why do so many people carry around guns?
I don't know. Maybe to feel safe. I think if people think, if I've got a gun at home and I wake up and there's a terrorist, I could take care of my family. Maybe that's what's going through their minds.
I discovered that it was easy for a settler to get a gun license in the West Bank. All they had to do was qualify at a shooting range like this one. But Palestinians living in the same area are never packing because Israel doesn't allow it. It turned out our trainer Steve was himself a settler who'd moved into the West Bank from South Africa. When we arrived at his settlement, I was surprised to see it look more like an American suburb than an outpost in a hostile territory. The community that you live in was built in the particular place that it was built because of the historic significance of the place?
Yeah, most of the little areas here that actually found signs of, ancient Jewish settlement there, we feel that it's like reviving the past kind of thing.
Right. So you're saying your settlement is right on the right here, and some fields that are used by Palestinians are the left. Are there any sort of confrontations between the people working in these fields and people from your settlement?
Not often. Occasionally I've been called in to what we call, it's called a khadira, that's an infiltration. I've caught on a few occasions Arabs that have infiltrated the settlement. They've come to steal. In my mind also, I think it's quite a clever way for them to gather information, see how quickly we react. They're taking all this information in, so we've got to be really alert.
Do you ever worry about your kids that they could get hurt?
I think every parent worries about their kids, man.
But do you ever question your decision to bring them out here in such close proximity to people who aren't very happy with your presence?
No. I mean, like, I'll tell you,
it's not something you think about.
It's not something I think about.
It turns out the Israeli state has given his settlement, and many others like it, its full backing. But like most settlements, it hadn't started out this way. It was once an encampment that was considered illegal, even by Israel. But over the years, the settlers have learned that if they squat a site in the West Bank long enough, Israel will give them its approval, its infrastructure, and its security.
You don't feel that coming here would provoke your Arab neighbors, though, into violence?
I don't see why it should. Look, again, what I'm saying is that I don't think it's right taking other people's land. I don't think it's right for me to, these guys are working hard. They've been working these fields now for maybe 2 generations.
Yeah.
But you should just know that's maximum. When we're talking about Palestinian people, we're maximum talking about maybe 1.5 to 2 generations.
Yeah.
The Jewish people have been here for 5,000 years. This dates back another, you can look on there, I think it's 3,000 years ago. This was active and used. We're not just a fabrication that this is, we want this place. I understand that they were here for whatever reasons. We were exiled out of Israel, but we were given the opportunity to come back.
Now, this was an incredible fabrication on Steve's part. The notion that the Palestinians had only lived on this land for 2 generations was totally false. But the idea that Jews had a historic claim to the West Bank's territories that trumped any Palestinian claims was one I'd hear over and over in the next few days, and turned out to be a major part of the settler ideology that ran directly counter to the 2-state solution plan.
Steve was an interesting guy. Our shooting instructor is also a settler, and somehow he made being a commando in the West Bank seem almost normal. But the settlement he's from is really established, and we want to find places that are newer, where people are literally on an encampment at the top of a hill and starting a brand new settlement. But they're on the wrong side of the green line for doing archaeological digs.
This land, it's for the Jewish people from all the world. Okay?
Are you recording?
I don't know.
No picture to me.
We headed out in the morning to see if we could find some Jewish outposts in the West Bank, ones that were small, unestablished, and unauthorized. We decided to drive to Havat Gilad, which is known for having clashed with both its Palestinian neighbors as well as the Israeli police force and the army. Israel has a love-hate relationship with the settlers. Nearly 40% of Israelis think the settlers shouldn't be in the West Bank, but their views have never translated into government policy, and many blame this on the influence of extremist religious parties who believe that the Palestinian territories were promised to them by God. Israel's prime minister says he wants a 2-state solution, but he's never actually said he wants to evacuate the settlements, and although he recently broke free of a coalition with the religious parties, he's still a strong supporter of the settlement enterprise.
There is no government that supports or will support settlements more than the government I lead.
This means Palestinians can expect more settler expansion and more tension with the Israelis and their army. And on our way to the settlement, we noticed a bit of a commotion involving a bunch of Palestinians and some Israeli soldiers.
We saw off to the side of the road this group of Palestinians, but they're being watched over by Israeli security forces, so we're wondering what's going on here.
هذه أرض لمزارعين من قرية كفر لاكف. اليوم صباحا تواجد هالمستوطنين قاعدين بيشتغلوا في الأرض هاي. توجهنا لهم شو ليش انتم فايتين عليها وهي مش أرضهم، يعني هي أرض لمواطنين عندنا من القرية. بقول نحن بنبحث عن آثار وعن شغلات زي هيك يعني في الأرض تمهيدا لأنه يبنوا عليها أو يصادروها.
It turns out Israel had mobilized its army to allow an Israeli archaeological team to dig up a field. The Palestinian villagers weren't happy because they saw it as the first step in the expansion of a nearby settlement.
This is totally crazy because this is an archaeological dig being carried out by the Israeli authorities in the West Bank, and this is how many soldiers you need in order to protect this archaeological excavation. But what's even more nuts is that the Palestinians are doing the manual labor. So the Israelis have hired Palestinians to do an illegal excavation in the Palestinian territories.
This is our land, our land of Jewish, of Am Israel, you know. Am Israel come back to our land. And if the Arabs want, they can go to Syria or to Egypt. This land, it's for the Jewish people from all the world. Okay? Our parents live here about 2,000 years ago. And we come back to our land, to our own. Thank you.
What is this place? What is the significance of this site? But they're on the wrong side of the green line for doing archaeological digs. No? I mean, I'm just asking if that's correct.
I don't know. Are you recording?
I don't know. I don't know.
No picture to me.
So those soldiers really didn't want me to talk to the Palestinians who are apparently upset about this archaeological dig taking place here. The reason they're upset is because a lot of times when the Israelis do an archaeological dig, they then build a sort of memorial around any Jewish artifacts that they find, and it becomes a place of pilgrimage for the settlers who come here, and then, you know, bit by bit, the Palestinians feel that they're losing even more land.
Turns out the guy who was leading the excavation, and who casually shrugged us off, was Michael Ben-Ari, an ultra-right member of Israel's parliament who lived in the settlement across the road. And Ben-Ari had a history of questionable behavior. Besides openly advocating for the departure of Palestinians from the West Bank, the US refused to grant him a visitor's visa because he'd been included on the State Department's terrorist watch list. Oh, and he's also been known to post heartwarming photos on his Facebook page, like this one, which shows him and a buddy relaxing on a couch, confiscated from an Arab family that had just been evicted from their home. Unfortunately, the soldiers were pressuring us to leave the site, so we got back on the road and continued our trek to Havat Gilad, which is known for attracting its own set of problems. Besides it being a hotspot for violence, Israel is known to come in and routinely bulldoze these illegal outposts. But the settlers are always more than happy to rebuild, so we were curious to see what shape the place was in. When we arrived, we came upon two teenagers who were building a house from the ground up.
קצת מערב פרוע לשתי הצדדים, מלחמה תמידית, נלחם על הארץ שלי, ואני גאה בזה.
We'd finally arrived at the Havat Gilad outpost in the West Bank, which is home to some of the most hardcore settlers. This was a community that was prepared to live at the top of a hill in the Palestinian territories in defiance of both international and Israeli law. There to tell us about their lives were Simcha and Yosef, a pair of teenagers who were busy doing what settlers in the area did best, building a house without a permit. When they hear somebody say, the West Bank, they think that it's a war zone, it's dangerous. You're living right next door to Arabic villages. Are you fearful for your own safety moving out here? You know, there's no fence around the settlement at all. You're kind of exposed.
I don't feel like I'm afraid. I have God. So, yeah. You're getting used to it, you know.
You can even hear the call to prayer going now from the nearby Arabic town.
Actually annoying.
Simcha didn't seem to have much sympathy for his Palestinian neighbors or their culture. But then again, he was kind of pissed because a couple of weeks ago, they'd apparently burned down a house he'd helped build and killed his dog.
Came in the morning, they saw nobody here, and came two guys and just burned the house. So after, all our guys, they went to the village and started fighting there, and it was a big mess, yeah.
Did anybody get hurt?
From our guys? No.
What about from their guys?
I think so, yeah.
Are friends afraid to come here?
They probably, yeah, they're afraid.
How do you meet girls?
We don't meet girls. That's one of the problems.
Do you get lonely here?
Lonely? No, I never get lonely.
So you're gonna start a settlement band?
Yeah. I'm gonna just make a Jewish blues, some kind of, something like that.
You plan on starting a Jewish blues band?
Kind of.
You're sort of on a musical mission from God. Simcha struck me as an oddly normal teen for someone who is taking part in a blatant land grab. But the settlers don't see it that way. In their view, God had promised the Jews this land. End of story.
ואז אתה מגיע לפה, ואתה קולט שיש כאן הרבה עבודה לעשות, ובסופו של דבר זה גם מספק אותך. אתה מבין? יותר מכל הפיתויים שיש בעיר ויותר מכל השטויות. פתאום מספק אותך, אתה מרגיש, אתה מקים מקום, ממש.
What do you think the Arabs want?
אני חושב, ואני יודע, ערבים רוצים להאחז בשבילם מלחמה ביהדות. הם רוצים לכבוש כל שטח, הם רוצים להגיע לתל אביב, לזרוק אותנו לים כמו שהם אמרו ב-48. זה בדיוק מה שהם רוצים. מלחמה תמידית בזכות הקיום שלנו ושלהם. וירשתם אותה וישבתם בה, וכתוב מראש שיהיה מחלוקת על הארץ. וזה ידוע שתמיד יהיה מחלוקת על ארץ ישראל. כל אומה רוצה להאחז בארץ הזאת. קצת מערב פרוע לשתי הצדדים.
Does it make you angry that most of the international community agrees with the Palestinians and that you shouldn't be in the West Bank?
לא מפריע לי מה יגידו לי. אני הולך בצדקת הדרך, על פי מה שכתוב בתורה, נלחם על הארץ שלי, ואני גאה בזה. כשהדבר גורם להסתבך עם החוק, זה עדיין לא מרתיע אותי.
Have you personally had any problems with Israeli police?
אני לא אענה על זה.
Simcha and I left Yosef to do some construction while we took a stroll around the settlement. I suppose if you do like everybody else here, you have to start your own family soon.
Yeah.
But you also have to go to the military, so how do you do both?
I do military and I'm good.
But you want to go to the army?
Oh yeah, I want to go to the army, yeah.
Can you imagine a situation where you'd be part of a unit that was ordered to provide security for a demolition?
Never. No.
What about the demolition of a Palestinian's house?
I'll be happy to do it. That'll be my dream.
Simcha introduced me to Yair, a 19-year-old who was about to enlist in the army. Yair's house had recently been destroyed by the police, and he seemed even more vocally opinionated than both Yosef and Simcha. I wonder if you tried to look at it from the perspective of the Palestinians. Their fathers were here, their grandfathers were here, their great-great-grandfathers were here. They don't know any other country. They might say, where are we supposed to go?
You know how many countries of Arabs there is? 22.
Okay.
We have one. Now we have half of it. Not even all of it. And the little piece we have, they want to steal from us again.
Would it be really stupid of me to say that the Canaanites were here before Israel? Maybe their descendants can claim to have more rights than Jews.
You see the Knaanim now? You see them anywhere?
No, I'm just
I
trying to
don't
make
see
a
them.
point that, history moves in many places in many different
History
ways.
moves. The Jewish people didn't move a millimeter.
But even Israel says this isn't your property.
I feel sorry for the government that they feel that they still in Poland and Germany, and they think, oi, Obama, oi, we are afraid of Obama, we are afraid of all the rest of the world. We are not in 1945 anymore, that's it. No Jew is going into the burning places anymore, that's it. Finish, done.
Is it true that settlers sometimes attack a Palestinian village as a reprisal against the Israeli police destroying a settler's house?
I heard about those things, but as a settler, I never did that, I never saw that. I have no idea what they're speaking about. I believe that it's a manipulation of the media. Every media guy has an agenda. My father always says that the only true thing in the newspaper is the date. That's it. This is my ideology. This is what I believe in. I believe that the Israeli people should live anywhere in Israel.
I headed back to meet with Simcha and Yosef, who'd taken a break from construction and were ordering a pizza from a nearby settlement called Kedumim. The goal for Chavat Gilad and Kedumim is to eventually merge and form a settlement block, which would in turn separate the Palestinian villages on either side of it. In the meantime, I headed back to Tel Aviv, across the Green Line, and into Israel proper. There's tons of soldiers and police here today because they're expecting a confrontation with the Palestinian demonstrators. After spending the night in Tel Aviv, it was time to head back to the West Bank for a Palestinian protest, which was only about 30 miles away, but things are never as easy as they sound. In addition to all the usual barriers between Israel and the Palestinian territories, the heavens had conspired to shut down traffic across Tel Aviv for the annual marathon. This was a celebration of fitness that I hadn't prepared for. It's Friday morning in Tel Aviv. We're going to the West Bank, where it's Land Day and all of Palestine celebrates their land, but it's also an occasion when they clash with Israeli troops. So we're going to see what that vibe is like. We're having to carry all of our stuff across the entire city, and frankly, it's really pissing me off. This is the Kalandia checkpoint. There's tons of soldiers and police here today because they're expecting a confrontation with the Palestinian demonstrators. We're going across the checkpoint while we can because once the trouble starts, they're going to shut it down. Oh man, not another one. You gotta be kidding me. Okay, now I'm pretty sure we're here. 3 hours after we set out from Tel Aviv, we were finally in the seat of the Palestinian Authority, Ramallah. We met Tawfiq Haddad, a Palestinian American who'd agreed to take us on a sporting event of a different kind. Palestinians were marking Land Day, an annual event that draws attention to the fact that the territory they control keeps shrinking and shrinking in inverse proportion to the amount of land controlled by Israel and its settlers.
Land Day for the Palestinians is the catastrophe day. When the Palestinian land has been taken, Palestinians became refugees around the world because the Zionists has been expelled them from their land in 48. And we are still, until now, suffering in the diaspora from this refugee problem. They want to keep their occupation and colonization forever. This is not going to happen.
But their politicians say they want to have a two-state solution.
this is lip services. Like if you really, as a politician, want two-state solution, prove it in the ground. Stop your settlements, take out your settlers from the West Bank and Jerusalem, stop demolishing the houses and the ethnic cleansing and confiscating the land, stop the wall that you are building, then we can believe that you want two-state solution.
The protests were taking place at the Kalandia checkpoint that I'd crossed through earlier, and Israel's security forces were determined not to let any of the Palestinians near it. Meanwhile, a local cell phone company decided that the madness erupting all around was the perfect place to advertise its services.
So the funny thing is, while this protest is going on, somebody's handing out these hats, and what these actually are from the local cell phone company, because apparently Palestinians never miss an opportunity to do some direct marketing.
What are they fucking, people are gonna die today and they just want them to be wearing the Joel hat? I mean,
Land Day demonstrations like this one were taking place all around the West Bank and along the borders of Israel, in Syria, Lebanon, and in Gaza, where one of the protesters, just 20 years old, was shot dead as he approached an Israeli crossing. But I'd heard that Palestinian demonstrators weren't the only ones in the habit of throwing stones. So I headed to an ordinary Palestinian town, a bit further away from all the commotion, to hear their side of the story.
هون كانت لك النار، هي أثرت لك النار من اعتداءات المستوطنين. الجيش يعني بينزل المستوطنين، الجيش بيوقف والمستوطنين بيضربوا علينا أحجار. في النهاية نطلع إحنا اللي ظالمينها.
We've seen a lot of settlers, and we've seen their settlements and their homes, but we really haven't got the Palestinian perspective at all. And apparently the Palestinians are often attacked by settlers, so we've come to this town, Asir al-Qiblia, to get their perspective on things. This is the end of the road in this Palestinian town, so these houses here are the ones that are closest to the Jewish settlement up the hill, and they face the brunt of the attacks when the settlers come down throwing stones. And the owners of some of these houses are telling us that the Israeli army doesn't do anything about it.
هون كانت لك النار.
Rubber bullets?
هون هي أثرت لك النار من اعتداءات المستوطنين. كان ينزلوا المستوطنين يكسروا الشبابيك القزاز. فآخر فترة يعني قبل شهرين بالضبط أجت مؤسسة فرنسية ووضعت الشبك هذا حتى إنه يحمي بيوتنا من الأحجار ومن القزاز اللي بيرموا علينا على البيت. فالوضع هسه يعني الكل بشعر بأمان، بس مش الأمان الكامل، أمان شيء بسيط يعني.
He showed us videos he'd taken himself of the settler attacks, where you could see youths come down from the settlement above the village to throw stones.
بس على فلسطينيين.
The worst thing about it was that they were accompanied by the Israeli army, who were supposedly there to separate the two groups, but were in fact doing nothing to stop the settler attack.
شوف الجيش شو بيعمل لهم. طلع الجيش. لا مشان الجيش.
A few weeks after we visited Asir al-Qiblia, the settler attacks resumed, but this time, two Palestinian villagers who were throwing stones and approaching Jewish youths were shot by the settlers with live ammunition during two separate attacks. Both times, the Israeli army did nothing to restrain the settlers. Fortunately, though, both men survived.
الجيش يعني بينزل المستوطنين، الجيش بيوقف والمستوطنين بيضربوا علينا أحجار. في النهاية نطلع إحنا اللي ظالمينها.
بفكر إنه الصبي الصغير هذا شو مسوي له؟ ولد صغير نايم في بيته الساعة 12 ربع، شو مسوي للمستوطن هذا؟ فبيجوا يقولوا إن إحنا ناس في عصيرة إرهابيين، لا مش إحنا الإرهابيين، هم مصدر الإرهاب نفسه.
The situation was obviously very tense and very dangerous. But this wasn't the only place under a fair bit of pressure. The Migron settlement is one of the few Jewish outposts that have received clear-cut court orders to be totally dismantled.
This is Migron, an illegal outpost, and Israel has ordered all of this to be demolished in a few months. So it's got a bit of a deliverance vibe going on. Not so much because there's a lot of hillbillies out here, but they're about to flood the valley.
Migron has seen some of its structures knocked down by the Israeli authorities before, but this time, Israel's High Court has ordered that the entire place be destroyed because it was illegally built on Palestinian land. It's a very unusual ruling, and most Palestinians see it as a one-off rather than a reversal of settlement policy in the West Bank. I spoke to one of the residents to find out how she felt about the impending demolition.
Do you sympathize with Palestinian people who also see their houses get demolished under Israeli bulldozers?
I see it from another point of view. I think it's a different story. Here, nobody killed anyone. Israel is destroying a house for Palestinians. It's not for no reason. Most of the times, it's because they did a very wrong thing, like people killing people and other things. The story here is that the families did nothing. It's not that I don't feel sorry. I do, but I more feel sorry about my own people that sits under attacks every day, and we see it all the time.
So right now must be a really difficult time for the residents of Migron.
That's right.
Because the High Court of Israel has stated pretty finally that by August they want all of this to be demolished. Do you know what you're going to do?
We believe that we won't be in the street. We work with the government and find a solution for this hard situation.
It's easy to get bogged down in the legal details of the status of each individual settlement. But the important thing to remember is that while some sites face the chopping block, the total number of settlers in the West Bank has grown from just 12,000 in the early 80s to over 300,000 today. And that figure doesn't even include a further 200,000 Israelis living in East Jerusalem, according to the activist group Peace Now. Many have begun asking themselves if it's even possible for a Palestinian state to emerge from a territory crisscrossed with Jewish settlements. A couple of miles down the road from Migron, just across a small valley, we saw a shack with a couple of teenagers poking their head out of the door to see who we were. It turned out that the shanty town of One was yet another unauthorized outpost. The place isn't marked on any map, but already it's been demolished and rebuilt a few times over. These kids were without any adult supervision. They told me they'd named the place Strength of Zion.
Wow, it's really basic. I mean, there's not even a floor. It's just the grass here. You've got holes in the roof. I mean, it's rained today.
They started it now. We need to fix it up. The police came, broke down. They cut out all our electricity. They broke down the water. Now we need to start building. Every time they break, we build again. We're going to build and not be afraid of building.
This has been totally incredible. This is the freshest, most radical outpost that we've visited so far. The crazy thing about it is that the more you talk to these guys, the more somebody tells you that God has given them this land, that there's no two ways around it. You kind of start to believe them and get to the point where you think a peaceful settlement is almost impossible.
With so many settlements being built up on the future territory of the Palestinian state, you start to wonder if Israel is working to make the two-state solution a reality, or if it's just telling the international community what it wants to hear. The more Israelis move to the West Bank, the less viable a Palestinian state seems to be. So the real question becomes whether Palestinians will end up citizens of a greater Israel with equal rights, or if they face a permanent regime of occupation.